First, Arrow ushers in their new director and cuts ties with Kirkpatrick. This week, Arrow made headlines when they announced their newly appointed director as Dr. John T. Kozlowski. They also officially disowned Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick by saying that he, quote, no longer affiliated with Arrow or the Department of Defense, end quote. To learn more about this story, let's hear from Ross Coulthart in this clip from News Nation.
I do want to talk about the breaking news of the appointment of a new Arrow director. This is the Pentagon's UFO UAP Investigation Office, Arrow, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and the interim director since October 2023, since Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick departed, has been Tim Phillips. And he's now been announced by the Defence Department to be being replaced by a Dr. John T. Kozlowski, who's come to us from the National Security Agency. And I have to say, Dr. John Kozlowski is extremely well spoken of by people I respect and admire in the UAP field. People say he's very, very genuine about bringing a new approach to Arrow. Not that he's hypercritical of his predecessors, but that he does want to try and restore public confidence in Arrow after, frankly, what has been months of turmoil. One of the first tests of Dr. John T. Kozlowski, of course, is going to be whether he retains Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick in the rather unusual role he's had as a kind of semi-consultant to Arrow, where he's been commenting in his role as a former director of Arrow and being given, I think, undue emphasis, I think, because of his past role as a director of Arrow. So it'll be very, very interesting to see whether Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is kept on in that role by Kozlowski. But what I can tell you about Kozlowski is he's pretty impressive. He comes from the NSA, which is, of course, one of America's premier spy agencies. He's been involved in what sounds like incomprehensibly complicated research, leading mission-oriented research in the fields of networking and computing. He's a subject matter expert in the area of free space optics, whatever that is, advising various DoD agencies. In addition to his optics research and crypto mathematics, Dr. Kozlowski invented an advanced language-agnostic search engine and served at the DoD's Special Communications Enterprise Office. I have no idea what that means. I took a peek earlier at 2 patents that Dr. Kozlowski has patented and found them so incomprehensible, I'm not even going to try and tell you what they are. He's got a bachelor's degree in mathematics and physics from California State University, San Bernardino, and a PhD in electrical engineering from Johns Hopkins University. And just to give you a summary of his work, the focus of his doctoral research was the invention of novel devices that leverage principles from quantum optics to receive very weak phase-encoded signals. Clear as mud. Well, what I can tell you that does make sense is Kozlowski is very well spoken of by people who want change and want a greater degree of transparency and openness by the Pentagon. And frankly, whilst I'm not a huge fan of Arrow and I've been very critical of Arrow, I think this is potentially a very positive move. And it's going to, I think, be incumbent on all of us to give Dr. Kozlowski a chance. Let's show him good faith and let's see how he moves.
So that was very well said, Ross. I totally agree with you that we should definitely give this new director a chance. I think it's important to remain hopeful that he will, in fact, restore confidence in Arrow. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
I mean, I'll adopt the hopeful approach to this. I don't know anything about this guy. I never heard of him before. He never crosses my feed in any way. I don't recognize his name. But anybody's better than Kirkpatrick, so there's always that. And I will remain optimistic and hope that he does a good job. I just hope that he knows what he's stepping into and what the climate of the room that he's about to walk into is, and that he does something to remedy that, because it's like a broken relationship right now between Arrow and like literally everybody else. So this guy has, you know, like a lot of work to do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So to add to that, though, we have a tweet from Mike Colangelo who says, former director of U.S. government UFO office departs from consultant role as successor is named. In a statement to Liberation Times, DoD spokesperson Sue Go said, Dr. Kirkpatrick is no longer affiliated with Arrow or the Department of Defense. Similar to many departing senior DoD officials, he had previously made himself available to the department in an unpaid capacity for a period of time to enable continuity and a smooth transition following his departure.
Yeah.
So he outies. He gone.
Right.
He gone.
Yeah. If you click on the link that's in this tweet, it says highlights of an article from Liberation Times called Former Director of U.S. Government UFO Office Departs from Consultant Role as Successor is Named. And they are as follows. The news comes as Arrow confirmed Dr. John T. Kozlowski as its new director 9 months following Dr. Kirkpatrick's departure. Dr. Kirkpatrick's complete departure from Arrow will be welcomed by those who criticize his approach and apparent lack of impartiality to the UFO topic. Furthermore, there were serious concerns that Dr. Kirkpatrick's team had mishandled investigations into UAP incursions over sensitive nuclear bases. The Arrow's credibility is now under serious pressure following the reintroduction of full UAP Disclosure Act by Senator Mike Rounds and Senate Leader Chuck Schumer, following its gutting last year National Defense Authorization Act. The reintroduction of the act intended to be included within the NDAA for fiscal year 2025 could be considered a major rebuke to Arrow, which concluded in February this year that it had found no empirical evidence for claims that the U.S. government and private companies have been reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology.
It is hoped that Dr. John T. Kozlowski's new leadership can represent a clean break from Dr. Kirkpatrick's legacy at Arrow. Before joining Arrow, Dr. Kozlowski held technical and leadership positions within the Research Directorate of the National Security Agency. Sources inform Liberation Times that Dr. Kozlowski is showing promising signs of adopting a new approach to the UAP topic, particularly in investigations related to allegations of retrieval and reverse engineering programs involving materials and biologics of non-human intelligence or unknown origin. However, it is still too early to predict the direction Dr. Kozlowski will take. Liberation Times also inquired with the DoD whether Arrow would oppose any provisions in the latest UAPDA following Dr. Kirkpatrick's admission that he successfully lobbied against the UAP Review Records Board included in last year's UAPDA. In response, DoD spokesperson Susan Go stated, quote, "We do not comment on pending legislation," end quote. And apparently that last quote stuck out to some people because on Twitter, user Disclosure Party said, the Pentagon stated they don't comment on pending legislation, yet they admitted to working behind the scenes to sabotage disclosure legislation. This blatant manipulation of the legislative process by a government agency undermines the very principles of democracy.
Mm-hmm.
If they can secretly influence laws that keep the truth from the public, what else are they hiding?
Yeah, exactly. And in addition to that, UFOB tweeted, the Pentagon often doesn't comment on UFOs because what you don't comment on doesn't exist and fades away from the public's view. Remember, make no comment. Jeez.
And to learn more about this blatant effort to hide the truth, let's take a closer look at that letter, which was written by a retired U.S. Navy captain that says this. And this is the captain talking to some guy, Jeff. I don't know which company Jeff is with, but bear with me. He says, Jeff, thanks for reaching out. Megan is correct. From a public affairs perspective, all media inquiries on UAP go to DoD Public Affairs. Susan Go, CC'd, keeping me in the loop as we coordinate closely. To date, we have not authorized any media interviews on the subject. Make no comment. The nuances of all this are such that any deviations from the statements that DoD makes will result in multiple news stories and additional FOIA requests at various levels. If we need to, we'll coordinate with you on specific responses depending on the questions asked. Also, generally speaking, we let the normal FOIA process work as it is supposed to, but we have been requesting that the FOIA offices coordinate with us on UAP-focused FOIA responses before they hit reply so that new terms, language, etc. aren't introduced that can complicate the overall messaging efforts. Messaging efforts.
Right.
Additionally, there is now a security classification guidance document at the secret level that addresses the UAP issue and what may/may not be discussed publicly. Happy to get that to you if you need it. Any questions, feel free to call me. Regards, Joe Gradisher, Captain, U.S. Navy, retired.
Wow.
Let that sink in, you guys. Like, there's a whole plan in place for them to not tell us shit.
Yeah, that's
a whole coordinated effort.
A whole coordinated effort
between the military, between the DOD, and between the media.
Yeah,
all three of them are working in cahoots to keep us in the frickin' dark.
And that's what we're up against. You know,
literally.
That's what we are fighting against. You know, we want disclosure. We want the UAP DA to get passed. Right. You know, and we are fighting against these people that are lobbying against their own laws or own rules, right? Mm-hmm. Congress is trying to make rules to govern, you know, disclosure. And the people that directly don't want disclosure are the ones influencing those laws.
Yep. And we've talked about this on the show before, that a lot of people inside the government that are fighting really, really hard to keep this at bay and to keep this under wraps and to keep this a secret are doing so based off of their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And what are they called? The Collins Elite or something like that? What's the name that just came out recently that was new to me, a new term? I believe it's Collins Elite, to basically where there's this like religious insider group that's influencing what Congress does based off of like if it disrupts their little religious view box or not. And I mean, if you want to live your life, that's way fair, you know, that way that's fair for you. But if you're doing it and influencing like, you know, the rest of humanity, for example, no, not cool.
Right. Yeah.
Not cool. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, a new Arrow director, Arrow cutting ties with Kirkpatrick, and the blatant effort on the military, the DOD, and the media's efforts to keep us in the dark. This is all a lot.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on Arrow's new director? Are you hopeful like Ross and think he will be more open and transparent with the American people? Do you think this is the last we will ever hear from Kirkpatrick? What are your thoughts on the military's blatant efforts to maintain UAP secrecy? Let us know in the comment section below. Up next, imminent impact. UFO community reacts to Lou Elizondo's revelations and the common thread they're all talking about. As we discussed last week, Lou Elizondo has been making the rounds doing interviews after the long-anticipated release of his book, Imminent, The Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. This week, we'd like to share some of the reactions of those interviews from those in the UFO community and highlight a common conversation they seem to be having. Let's see if you can pick up on that common thread.
I bet you they can.
I bet you they can, too.
I bet you they can. In this first clip from Engaging the Phenomenon YouTube channel, we hear from investigative reporter Leslie Keene and host James Iandoli, where they discuss the recent New York Times article review of Imminent by Louis Elizondo, Leslie's opinion on the book, and the status of UAP transparency.
Leslie Keene. Welcome, Leslie.
Hi, James. So much fun to be here again.
Likewise. So it's great having you back, Leslie. And people will probably have read now an article that you recently did for the New York Times regarding Lou Elizondo's book. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was actually co-authored with Ralph Blumenthal. I guess all the stories I do for the New York Times we're a team. We always do them together. And that one, it came out. So we had an exclusive from Lou to break the story about his book in the New York Times a few days before. It was about 5 days before the book came out. And so, yeah, we worked with Lou. We worked with a lot of editors at the New York Times to get the story out. It was a real challenge because we were writing about crash retrievals and even bodies and, you know, things that are not easy to get in the New York Times.
We're, talking about Luis Elizondo's new book, Imminent, which I recommend to everybody. Was there anything in the book that surprised you or that you were not expecting or that's, these are a few different questions. So, but also stood out to you like, wow, I never really thought about that in regards to UAP before or even about Lou.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I first read it, the overall impression I had was just how extraordinary it was that somebody of his stature is actually stating these things as fact now. There's no hedging. It's like, we are not alone. We have crashed objects, and that's a fact. Whereas, it's usually like, well, possibly we're not alone. Yeah, it was like there was sort of another level to me of certainty and fact in the way Lou presented this information that I found just really compelling. And to me, it was sort of taking it up to another level of disclosure because he was doing that. But I also found, in terms of things that surprised me, I loved when he got personal about how he reacted to things. Like he talked about ontological shock and how he was personally affected by things like Hal Puthoff talking about the physics of general relativity and how that explains how the objects work. To Lou, that was a major turning point, and he was just blown away by it. And other things too. I like, there was one description where he's sitting in his car in the traffic in DC. I don't know if you remember that. And he's just talking about how his mind is completely blown by these things.
Yeah.
And I really love the fact that he was able to include his kind of personal story, include his family. And it was a much broader presentation than we've ever heard from him before, obviously, because it's a book. But, a lot of the material that he presented was familiar to me, but there's some little juicy gems in there, things about aerospace companies that have materials and him seeing an implant that actually moved.
Right. Yes.
A lot of little tidbits in there that are really interesting. And I think you just get a good picture of who he is as a human being, which is somebody of tremendous integrity and honesty and passion about this issue and really on a mission to try to accomplish something important. And I think he's just taken that to another level with his book.
Yeah, I really appreciate how personal it was. I mean, he really put himself out there, and I mean, in a very kind of way that makes him vulnerable to attack. But
right.
I mean, he's really laying it all out there, and I have a lot of respect for that, because that's not something that is easy to do, especially when you're talking about your feelings and personal experiences, not even with the phenomenon and the program, even talking about his early childhood and his mother and those kind of things, I think really added to his character, and I think will hopefully humanize him to people, because so often you see all these attacks and some people just see him as some kind of personality that's out there without seeing the human side. And I think anytime you do that, that's a mistake. Like, you always have to consider anybody that's out there as a human. And I think people just see whatever's in the headline or whatever is being discussed, and they kind of miss that. And I think that this book really added to his character, and I think give people a better idea where he's coming from, and all the struggle and everything that he went through to do what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. I really respect him for that.
But another topic that made it into the book, which I'm grateful did, was remote viewing and Lou's exposure to that. So what do you think about that being involved in the whole in Lou's book?
I'm glad it was there. Yeah. I mean, it's part of his life, his training, and it probably opened up his perceptions in a certain way. And, it deserves credibility as much as anything else does. I mean, remote viewing works, people can do it. And I'm glad he included it.
Yeah. And, just to kind of finish off on this part about Lou's book, do you think, or what do you think people should walk away with when reading Lou's book?
I mean, I think it's different for everyone because it depends on how much they already know. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what's most important about that book is that it reached beyond the UFO community. It reached the general public, which is why I like to write for papers like the New York Times, because they reach an audience that don't know anything about this. I think also to remember that what everyone is asking for, like Lou and the others, working along those lines, is not that we reveal national sensitive national security
Right.
information, obviously, but just that the world has a right to know that we're not alone, that basic fact. And to me, that's kind of like a scientific fact. It's like knowing that the earth is round and not flat,
Yeah.
or knowing that meteors, rocks can fall from the sky, all the things that we've dealt with throughout history that have been resisted, the thing with Galileo, with the earth not being the center of the universe. It's a major scientific revelation about the nature of who we are and the nature of our cosmos that everybody has a right to know, I think. And I think Lou makes that point very eloquently in his book. And it's not like they need to know what we know about that technology.
Right.
But
Yeah.
just
I mean,
that
I think
basic reality, we are not alone. And, there is another intelligence, a higher level, or whatever you want to frame it. Why should what right does anyone have to keep that scientific fact from the rest of the planet? Just a basic reality that everyone has a right to know, because it changes our perceptions of who we are. It changes our scientific paradigm. It changes our worldviews, and it moves us forward in our evolution to understand that. So I just think, holding that back, if you look at it from that perspective, it seems kind of insane to me that some military guys think they have a right to restrict the rest of civilization from knowing a basic fact about who we are, which is not a national security fact. The fact that we're not alone is not a national security fact. That's why Lou's allowed to say it.
Yeah.
And everyone else says it. But people, we haven't, I guess it's been said many times, but we haven't crossed a threshold yet where it becomes integrated into the world view and into the international perception of who we are. I mean, that hasn't happened yet, even though people have said it. So it's a question of, when is that tipping point going to happen? And what is going to happen to create that tipping point when it does become an accepted reality for the whole world?
I think Leslie Kean is a very well-spoken person. She's definitely had a lot to say over the years about the whole UAP issue. She's written a lot of things. Some noteworthy UFO-related New York Times articles that Leslie co-authored include, but are not limited to, the 2017, bombshell article called "Glowing Auras and Black Money: The Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program." Then there was 2020's "Do We Believe in UFOs? That's the Wrong Question." And then, of course, the most recent 2024 article called "A Memoir Offers an Insider's Perspective into the Pentagon's UFO Hunt," which, of course, is an article reviewing Lou's book. And then as far as books that Leslie has written, in 2010, she wrote "UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record." And then in 2017, she wrote a book called "Surviving Death: A Journalist Investigates Evidence for an Afterlife," which, of course, a lot of people know that was also made into a Netflix series.
Yeah.
So Leslie is definitely well-versed in this field, and I appreciated her and James talking.
In the next clip, Merrick von Rennenkamp and Ross Cohart discuss what was most shocking to them about Elizondo's revelations, and why, despite all the evidence presented, they still aren't hopeful Congress will act.
I think the thing that sticks out for me is Lou is, as he acknowledges, he's quite a humble guy. He doesn't like being the focus of attention. But the reality is, what really struck me when I was filming with him over several days in DC, he's under incredible pressure. And the decision that he made as, a very senior serving employee of the Defense Department to step away from that world that he'd been part of for decades and to make this decision to speak out publicly and take a stand on the UAP issue, it's probably the bravest thing that he, as a warrior, as a combat soldier, has ever done. And I was really shocked today, Marek. I'm going to take a swipe at the stupid sod who basically made this insinuation against Lou. I won't say who it was, but this idiot commented online basically saying, in the wake of his CBS mornings interview, this is just a cash cow for Lou Elizondo, and that essentially all this is about is insinuating that he and we are all about making money. I can tell you, for Lou, the costs have been intense. And that's the thing that really struck me when I was filming with him, is the damage that this has caused to his career, the stress on his family life. it's intense. And I don't think the public understand the degree of sacrifice that he's making in order to bring this issue into the public domain.
I couldn't agree more, Ross, and it really speaks to motivations. To your point, I think actually physically showing a photo of the RV, the trailer that he lived in your special, it drives home that this was not easy for Lou, his family, and it certainly was an enormous stressor on his life. There's no question about that. I think he saw, as Chris Mellon has elucidated, he saw a major national security vulnerability, a gap, an extraordinary gap that nobody was paying attention to. And he's been hammered, he's been attacked relentlessly online and by the Pentagon. And so you're absolutely right. He made some enormous sacrifices to come forward, and he is driving the conversation forward now, several years on from going public and from that fairly well-known resignation letter. Now he is driving the conversation, and he's truly, I think it would not be hyperbolic to say that he is one of the key catalysts behind some of the most extraordinary legislation we have seen in American history.
Are you noticing the conversational pattern yet? I think you and I already had this conversation, so you know what it is, but I'm curious to see if the audience has picked up on what my brain's trying to lay out for you guys. In case you're unsure, though, let's hear from one more person. In this next clip of a Twitter space called UFO Community Supports Each Other Getting to the Truth, run by Red Panda Koala, Patrick from Vetted expresses his thoughts on Lou's recent revelations.
Good.
Vetted, before you go, if you have to just dip in or what's been your favorite part of the return of Lou? What's been the thing that you from his interviews? Maybe not so much the book, but the interviews, Broken, the Ross Coulthard thing.
That's a good question. Okay, I've been thinking about this. I haven't said this. I was going to make a video, but I'll just tell y'all. I think it was, the first, not the one that just got released with Merrick, okay, but the one that was like Confessions of a UFO Hunter, right? Like last Friday, that got released. Look, I'll be honest, like, yes, UFOs, aliens, a book, this, that, all this other stuff. Okay, great. Everyone's talking about that. But I'll be honest, man, when I watched that interview with Lou and his family, and he's talking about the struggles they had and, his wife speaking and the kids, I gotta be honest, man, that really hit me hard. That really hit me hard. And it gave a sense of realism, right, to what we're dealing with. There are actual people and families behind these stories, right, and these things that come out. And again, forget UFOs, forget aliens. This is real shit, real people struggling. And that really bothered me, that like his wife and his kid, like they all had to struggle. And that hit me hard, man. I'm not going to lie. And I out of everything, that's what I've been thinking about the most.
I agree. So, his wife speaking about their experiences was probably one of the things that, I was just like, because it's also new, right? Like we haven't ever heard from his wife. And then, they went into their experiences and stuff too, like the orbs in the house. Like that's pretty next level. I'm glad he has the orbs supports him.
Yeah, for sure. The orbs thing separately, like I just mean like when they were struggling financially and like living in this and that, like that dude, that hit hard. That hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. And it made me just see Lou in a different light, if I'm being honest. It made me see the things I say about Lou in a different light. Maybe some of the criticisms and maybe even some of the praise, right? It just made me look at everything differently, and it made me filter things. And even with today's and what happened today in the last couple of days, like it's just making me rethink a lot of things and how I approach this topic and what my main goal is. What am I trying to achieve? What do I want people to learn from my videos? What do I want people to take away from my videos?
All right. So what do you think the common thread is that I mentioned earlier? What kind of tapestry do you think I was trying to weave there? I'm curious to hear. What are your thoughts?
So, the financial struggles that Lou and his family went through, and hearing about that and hearing them speak on it, It really drives home the fact that, this has been a very serious change for him and his family, and he is not doing this for money. He did not do this for fame. It, in my mind, it solidifies that he did this to really try and get disclosure going.
That's basically the thread I was trying to weave in here. It's just basically like to recognize that this isn't just Lou trying to sell some books and get rich and famous real quick. This is a long process. Like, he had a 20-year career that he literally walked away from in 2017, and since then has been boots on the ground trying to get this process going, trying to get the right people on board, trying to get all this stuff, just basically like boots on the ground, doing the damn thing. And it really just resonated with me that this affected his family. Hearing from his wife had a big impact on me too. I remember when she showed up on the screen, I was like, oh snap, they're bringing his whole family into this. Like, we're not just getting like the career aspect of it. We're getting like a very well-rounded picture. I mean, they even showed his 2 daughters that are involved in this whole situation too. And, he talked about how he wasn't the only one that experienced the orbs in the house, that all the other CIA people or whomever were working on this thing also experienced these kinds of like experiences with the orbs and the hitchhiker effect, if you want to call it that. So yeah, just like Patrick said, these are real people. Like, I know sometimes it seems very like distant. You feel very like disconnected from it. But when you look at people like Lou Elizondo as a human being, a man with a wife and 2 kids that had to leave his career, had to leave his house, had to live in a trailer, it's just like it puts things into perspective for me, at least.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's also important to drive home the fact that he did not take any money for doing interviews. He always said that he did not receive any money from any interviewer ever. And for his family to have been struggling during that time, and he didn't take any money for the interviews, that to me, he really, really, really wanted to get this disclosure ball rolling,
right?
And he's continuing his mission. I have the utmost respect for him, and his family. And I am so happy that he sacrificed, not only his time and his career, but his family's hardships to get the disclosure ball rolling. So I'm really happy that he did that. And thank you, Lou.
Lou for MVP, you guys. Lou for MVP. I have a feeling like once disclosure has happened, like think in the future, like, and not even like a far away future, like a very close to us future, to where this is all out in the open. It's an understood thing. Everybody's talking about it. We're revolutionizing our systems. When we look back at this, like we can look back at like now and laugh and kind of be like, wow, we were really all involved in this process. But the point that I was trying to make is that like, I feel like Lou's going to be like an MVP of this whole process. Like, there are certain people that stand out to me, and like Lou Elizondo is a huge influencer, if I can even use that word right now in the situation. He's a huge influencer in the disclosure process and efforts. So
I just want to say thank you to everybody that is in this community and pushing for the truth to come out.
Because we're all people just like Lou, right?
Exactly.
So I mean, he's not above us.
Ross Colhart, Gary Nolan, Patrick from Vetted, everybody on Twitter,
Chris Lato, Gary Nolan, there's like a whole slew of people that we could list that are involved in this conversation.
Right. Hal Putoff, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for coming out and trying to get the truth out into the open.
Absolutely. And, if you have been thinking about starting your own project where you start a podcast, or if you start a little blog, or if you start a Discord server, or even if you just start a conversation with the dude at the fucking bus stop, I mean, like you have a role to play in this as well. So, yeah.
And next on the docket, the mysterious connection between Guadalupe Island and UAPs. Hold on to your hats, UFO enthusiasts. A tantalizing new mystery has emerged that links the infamous 2004 Nimitz encounter with a strange 2019 UAP event off Southern California. And it all points to one intriguing location: Guadalupe Island.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So journalist Merrick von Rennenkampf, who we just heard from, dropped some bombshell tweets revealing that these unidentified aerial phenomena mysteriously vanished right above Guadalupe Island, not once, but twice in 2 separate incidents, 15 years apart.
All right. So that tweet says, breaking. Connection between the 2004 Nimitz and 2019 SoCal UAP events. In 2004, groups of UAP disappeared from radar right above Guadalupe Island, according to Kevin Day. In 2019, after hovering around the USS Paul Hamilton, a group of UAP departed on a heading to the exact same location. He also said transmedium spheres, Guadalupe, and 2019 SoCal incidents. In the USS Omaha video, a sphere descends into the ocean. Another transmedium incident occurred the next day. That group of UAP then proceeded towards Guadalupe Island. Witnesses there described transmedium spheres. But that's not all. In this clip from Unidentified Inside America's UFO Investigation, we dive deeper into the phenomenon, including the mind-bending transmedium spheres that seem to be connected to the area, and hear firsthand from local pilots and fishermen who encountered these things.
I don't know about you guys, but I thoroughly enjoyed that show. It was one of the shows that I watched when I first started getting into ufology. And it really opened my mind up to a lot of different possibilities. I thought it was very entertaining and shed some light on some potential mysteries.
Yeah. I really hope that you guys appreciate that clip that I made that we just watched, and I really, really hope that YouTube doesn't copyright strike it and we don't have to take it out. If I'm saying this and you didn't just see a video, that's probably what happened. But I felt like I couldn't leave it, like I couldn't make the clip any smaller. It was like a 40-minute video. I cut it down to 12 minutes. I feel like it was like the best of the best parts of that story. And I just find it very, very synchronistic that, you know, you have this Tic Tac Nimitz UAP sighting, you have this whole situation with Guadalupe Island. You know, it kind of reminds me of the Ronnie Burnett Amazonian jungle story with the sacred tree, where they always see the glowing orange UAP spheres like entering and exiting the forest from that site where the sacred tree is. They say they think there's a portal between dimensions in that area. And I don't know, maybe Guadalupe Island is just another one of those like geographic hotspots that
And
maybe it's ley lines, maybe
it's been reported that there's anomalies, geomagnetic anomalies just north of the island.
So as if the geomagnetic anomaly wasn't enough and you think it can't get any stranger, there's a buzz about a bizarre dome-like structure spotted on Google Maps near the island. And the question that comes up in everybody's mind is, could it be linked to these mysterious happenings? So Underslinger BSE tweeted, "This is the 10,000-foot radius dome exactly 60 miles north of Guadalupe Island." And if you look at that picture, you can see where Guadalupe Island is. You can see 60 miles north of it, there's this weird, like, dome-looking divot kind of thing. Maybe divot's not the right word, because isn't divot, like, inward versus outward? So opposite of a divot, like a pop-up kind of thing.
Dome,
yep.
Right.
And there's how many of them? Because I think you found, like, 3 of them, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, but there's many more than just that. I don't know what they are. Go on Google Maps and look near Guadalupe Island at the ocean floor. And if you look around there, you will start to see what looks like spheres or domes on the ocean floor. And I don't know what they are. I don't have an explanation for them. Are they related to UAP? Are they related to this phenomenon? It could be.
Yep. And I mean, this could also potentially relate to the tear in the sky stuff with Catalina Island. And I'm also curious to see if Google Maps pulls out another scrub brush effort and erases this from the system, like kind of like they did with that area that Tim Gallaudet commented on.
Yeah.
Google's known for, like, once we find something on there and start talking about it, the next day it's like scrubbed off of the system. So it's like, I'm curious to see if that happens in this scenario.
You know, I think it's the government, either the Department of Defense or the Air Force, or some sort of governmental agency that discovers that, oh, hey, look, there's something, being shown on Google Maps. We need to call them. So I think it's
definitely
Google getting told to remove something. In the same way that Google does not update the images for any sort of classified facility or test site, you know, like Area 51 or Tonopah. You know, those are very old pictures that were taken at the military bases of the test ranges, and I feel like they do the same with underwater anomalies. When they are told to scrub them or remove them, they do.
Yeah.
You know,
This whole thing is very, very interesting to me. That Nimitz happened, you know, the Tic Tac UFO incident happened in this area. There's a lot of fishermen and pilots, both in California and on the Mexican Guadalupe Island, that are talking about seeing things in the air, seeing things in the water, seeing things traveling in ways that can only be described as or you know, it's like I love how
you love your sound effects.
I do, and I love that those guys were all using sound effects like and all you gotta say and that's it, gone, you know.
Yeah, and you instantly understand what they mean.
Exactly. And then you got these dome looking things in the water, and the fact that there's this magnetic anomaly in the area and all these UAP sighting. I mean, there's just too much going on in this area for any of it to just be like a coincidence. I don't even believe in them things anymore. I think we're connecting strings on the murder board again.
Okay. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the mysterious connection between Guadalupe Island and UAPs? Please